you hear my voice back there? Yes, that sounds like that's probably okay. Fantastic. It's really hard to follow an act like that. That was really incredibly powerful. So anyway, I'm going to now talk about something completely different, which is, are we doing enough to prepare our children for the future and to help students think about the jobs that will be available when they finish school? And I think I'm going to build on Sue's comments earlier and also Charlie's, which is good. I was sitting in the back thinking, oh, I hope I'm going to be on target, and I think I probably am. The voice that you hear here is a Canadian one. I grew up in Prince George, which is there in Canada on the west coast. And it's given me a very different perspective in a number of ways. This is a picture of my mother, and she is Canadian. Her parents were from England, and she didn't work when I was a young child, but she was a receptionist at our doctor's office afterwards. And this is a picture of my father. He's a telephone engineer, and literally the sort of person that used to climb up telephone poles and splice them together to make them work. So I had some exposure to technology and the wonders of at least telecommunications when I was a young child growing up. Neither of them went to university. The first person who I'd met was when I was about 16, who had gone to university, is this person, Dwayne Rubidoux, and he was a psychologist at my school. And he gave me a lot of confidence and also talked about what he did. And it was the first time that I'd heard people talk in an animated way about their work and how they found it fulfilling. And he encouraged me to think about going to university, and so I did. And when I went to university the first time, it was the University of British Columbia, and this is Jean Leponce, who was my professor, and check out his glasses. I just love them. They used to just perch on the top of his head, and he taught me to understand the world very, very differently than I did when I arrived. And he told me that I should think about the world and I should read The Economist. So I started reading The Economist, and we got a subscription, and thought it was amazing. And I still read The Economist to this day, and it's changed the way that I look at the world. When I was at the London School of Economics, I studied a case study about this company called F International, which was started up by this woman here, Dame Steve Shirley. And she had started up a company because she wanted the freedom to work at home and to employ women while they were doing the school run, or between when they were doing the school run, because it gave them the flexibility to run their companies. And she wanted to do that, and she changed her name from Stephanie Shirley to Steve Shirley when she signed her letters, because when she wrote business development letters to people and she signed it Stephanie Shirley, they didn't get answered. So she just thought, oh, I'm just signing them Steve, they're not going to know. And she did, and then business took off. So that is what made me become a computer programmer, which is 1987, which is quite a long time. After being a computer programmer for a while, I thought I liked to work with the things that had been written rather than write them myself, and I wasn't a great computer programmer. I went to study business at Harvard. After that, and when I was at Harvard, I studied and met a lot of people who ran their businesses and became more and more fascinated by business and how things worked. After business school, I joined my first startup, and then sold it, and then started up a second one, and then I floated that one, and then everything got very messy in the last 15 years. I went portfolio, and I've done a few different things, and I'm going to start on the right-hand side. I started investing in companies that were being started up by students at schools and universities, and there's 55 and counting. I don't do it a lot. I do 3 or 4 a year. I'm also an investor in some venture capital funds, which I find interesting. I'm on the board of Raspberry Pi. I'm hoping that some people here have had their hands on Raspberry Pis in the audience. Good, brilliant. And Raspberry Pi is about helping kids to think about what they should make and how they make it, and simplifying it to make it known that it really is easy. Founder of Founders4Schools, I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. SVC2UK, helping think about entrepreneurship in the economy as a system. I used to lecture at London Business School in economics, and I'm on the board of an assessment, and we might get hisses because I do something on an assessment agency, but I'm on the board of Cambridge Assessment and CUP, and all of that is about learning, both at university and at school level. In terms of big companies, which I also spend a bit of time doing because I'm also fascinated by big companies, The Cambridge University, I'm on their finance committee, and I help them think about what they're going to do in 50 years' time to make sure that they are still going to be a #1 research university in the world, which is a different way of thinking about a company or an entity, but it's one that I enjoy, and it's sometimes more enjoyable to think about 50 years ahead rather than can we hit the payroll, which is often what we think about with some of my smaller companies. On the board of the London Stock Exchange, and you may think, what an odd thing to do, but I love markets and I love information and I love data. And that particular company has operations in 23 different countries, and you can see things with the information that they have at their hands, and I love that. Care.com is a company started up by a woman who I adore, Sheila. She was what's called a sandwich mother. She was taking care of her parents. She was taking care of her kids. She was trying to work, and she was very frustrated. So she formed an agency, like a TripAdvisor. Charlie talked about TripAdvisor earlier. Sort of like a TripAdvisor for mums who are working to help them find nannies, tilers, people who can help in the house with the kids. And then on the other hand, trying to help people who can deal with their, her mother-in-law's dementia and find the best carer for that. And I joined that company because I loved what they were doing, and I thought they were solving a real problem. And they were using technology to facilitate the people, the carers who were in that world. And the board of Zoopla, again, it's a company, I don't know if anybody's moving house recently, but it was a small company started out with a data feed from the government on house prices, and it helps people buy and sell houses more easily than they did before. I've done some things in the government. I'm an ambassador, despite the fact I live in Cambridge. I'm an ambassador for London for the mayor to try to talk about why London and the UK is a fabulous place to live and to thrive. Innovation Launchpad, and I'm also a former trustee of Nesta, which thinks about science and technology and the arts and collaboration. I didn't mention it earlier, but Charlie talked a lot about collaboration. My thesis when I was at business school was on collaboration in the high-tech industry. What I'm going to talk to you about a little bit later is collaboration between business and educators and parents and the government, and the benefits of that, and why it's so powerful, and why it could help all of us do a lot of things. Last week I launched something called the Scale Up Report, and it was looking at economic growth for the UK as a whole. And what was the discovery is when I was asked to write the report by the government, I thought I was going to write a report on finance, which I'm strong in, or I thought I was going to write a report on tech, which I also know a little bit about, but I actually ended up writing a report about education and skills. And that was an unexpected outcome, because what happens in terms of the economic growth, it's absolutely tied to the skills that we're imparting in the schools today. In writing that report, I read 148 other research reports and interviewed 300 policymakers and practitioners in 20 other countries, and was very exhausted at the end of it. And this is just a couple of snippets of learnings from that. The first is that the pace of change in our economies is extraordinarily fast. The 100%, which is on the screen behind, is the percentage of net new jobs that are created by companies that are less than 5 years old. So the TripAdvisors that Charlie was talking about, they are creating 100% of the net new jobs in our economy today. And that's kind of interesting, but it does mean that we need to equip people with skills to problem solve. The average child will have 24 jobs before they retire now. That's a lot of jobs. Navigating between those jobs, which don't even exist yet, is a problem or an opportunity, but it's something that we need to think about in order to equip our children. 40%, that number is the percentage of our GDP today that is controlled by companies that are less than 15 years old. Still means that 60% are from older companies, more than 15 years old, but the economy is moving very, very fast, and much, much faster than it ever did before when I was in school or when I was in university. And that's something that we have to think about because it has implications for how we teach, has implications for how we learn. The other thing which I found very interesting in this meanderings over the last year as I turned into a report writer rather than an entrepreneur or an investor, I'm going back to being an entrepreneur and investor, it's more where I feel comfortable, was that 1% of the companies in this country are responsible for 36% of the jobs. Now that's kind of interesting, actually. And how many is that? That's 8,923 companies in the UK are responsible for pretty much all of the jobs. And they're everywhere. They're not just in London, you'll be pleased to know, as we stand here in Manchester. If you look here in Manchester, the number of companies that are scaling up and responsible for most of the jobs are 233. And that's a good thing, because we can identify them. And in fact, there are services, scaleupbritain.org up there, .com, which shows you in Manchester exactly what are the companies that are growing, that are creating the jobs for the kids that are in your classrooms and indeed in your homes if you're also a parent. And that's quite interesting, because they're identifiable and you can think about them, you can invite them into your classroom. And that's part of the collaboration that I want to talk about a little bit later. These companies, I mean, here it seems kind of academic, 233, but they're run by people like you and me. And they will be run by the people who are in our classrooms soon. So this here is Ramesh Raskar. When he was a kid, he was always taking apart his parents' cameras. And he didn't manage to put them back together all until he was a little bit older, but then he did. And it's turned into a lifelong passion for him. He now teaches physics, and in addition to teaching physics, he started up a company that connects a little lens that costs about 20 pounds to create to an iPhone. You flash it into the eye of you take a picture of the eye with the special filter on of a child in India, and it will use an algorithm to see what is wrong with that vision. Now, the reason why that's beneficial is because that piece of equipment usually costs $500,000. But he's taking the cost of that equipment down to 20 pounds, and he's put it into the hands of everybody who has an iPhone. And this company now has the opportunity to improve the eyesight of billions of people. And he felt an outcast when he was in school because he was excited about cameras. And it wasn't until a little bit later in life that his passions and his enthusiasms were fanned. This here is Julie Dean, and I really like her story. She's from Cambridge, actually. But she was working in an office, and I think as a secretary, and her kids were being bullied, and she wanted to do something about it. She thought, I'm going to start up a handbag company. So she started up a handbag company, and she made enough money to take her, and I know it's probably about outrageous to say this woman's taking her kids out of state school and put them into a private school, but that was the solution for her. It's probably not the ideal solution. We don't want to get into that. But this turning herself into an entrepreneur helped this woman out of a state that she was uncomfortable with. This here is Lucinda. She lives in Edinburgh, and she was passionate about chemistry when she was a kid, and then she became a writer of recipe books. So she edited recipe books, and she always loved cooking. Her third child had a very severe gluten allergy, and she hated serving him food and buying him food that he didn't like. And so she wanted to create, using her understanding of chemistry, she created bread, and gluten-free bread that tasted delicious. And it caught on at her school. And other people in the school saw her child that hadn't been able to eat for ages eating food all of a sudden. And they said, can I have some of that? And so she said, oh yeah, I can make a few more. And then she introduced it as an experiment at Tesco, and they had queues around the block of all of the people who had gluten allergies who were queuing up to get into the store early so that they could get her food. And that started her along the path of entrepreneurship. And sometimes, as teachers or as people in our individuals, we don't see the people that are right here in front of us. We don't know that there are people running these companies that are really fueling the economy. We don't see them, but they are absolutely everywhere. This is Claire, and she turned from being a portfolio person after having started up a company and sold it into back running a company that had been started by a French woman who was infertile and had decided to become a PhD in infertility and started up a gadget company, wearable technology, because she wanted to monitor what was going on in her body so that she could understand if she could possibly have a child. And the company's just celebrated its 1,000th baby and is just commercializing for the US. And these people are all around us. And the point is that today's students will be working for and creating tomorrow's companies. I don't know if you're aware that, I know some of the stats that, Sue, that you were talking about, the number of unemployed, or the percentage of unemployed people. This number here is the number of open positions today at these 8,923 companies that I talked about. And what prevents these companies from growing right now is an access to skills. they would be able to accept customer orders if they could hire people who had the right skill set. And the good news is it's not that hard to create the right skill set, but we probably need to think a little bit more about what we do. The number, sadly, we started 1 million today, but the Royal Society released a report in June that talked about forecasting that the number of jobs that would be open would expand by another 1 million by 2018. And I know that Charlie was talking about Apps for Good, which I'm a huge fan of that company. And I think that he said that they'd educated 20,000 children in the last year, which is fantastic. The number of jobs that will be created in the app economy by 2018 is an additional 5.8 million. And that's pretty exciting, actually. If I were a student, I'd start thinking about apps. And this is very hard as somebody who works at an assessment agency to put this next slide up. But I think we are all very concerned about the skills gap. And I think it is a crisis, and I think now is time to do something about it. So being an entrepreneur, because that's sort of what I am, and, or at my core, I like to think of myself as an entrepreneur, I tried to think about how we could solve this. And I was fascinated. You saw my history was by learning through role models, by being told that I could do things that I never imagined that I could do. I didn't mention that Prince George is a lumber town, and it's also the alcoholism capital of North America. I was told that I should be a social worker by the people at school, probably because they knew they needed a lot of social workers. I don't think it had a lot to do with what I have an innate capability of being. I did try. I started out in psychology in my first university and really found that I was really not suited to it at all. And I was suited to econometrics and numbers, but I was really not suited to that. It used to terrify me. I think we need to help. So I put together, again, remember my fascination for data, I put together a lot of data sources, and I'm going to talk to you about them. But I also want to talk to you about the power of role models. After one 1-hour session of 4 role models going into your classes, we started an experiment in 2011, and we put the founders of these schools into the classroom, and then we measured afterwards what the impact was. And what we found was really profound, and it wasn't what we were expecting. We knew role models were good, but we didn't know how good. So after one 1-hour session, 54% of the students claimed that they want to study STEM after just one 1-hour session. And it's free. It doesn't cost anything to invite these people into your classrooms. And the other is that 87% of them wanted to get involved in a project or a business afterwards. When we first had this idea, we weren't sure where all the entrepreneurs were. I mean, in my world, I see entrepreneurs all the time, so I thought, I'm sure we have enough. I'm sure we have enough to be able to go into all of the classrooms anywhere in the UK. And I think we do. So we've started putting in, and what follows behind are just some of the comments from some of the first schools that we put them into. So they act as a role model, they inspire, they bring to life what otherwise may seem like an academic subject. Because if you come in and you start talking about the body monitor that you built because you understood physics, and you explain how it helped you have your first child and 1,000 other people, that makes it come to life. And it's really exciting. This here was from Coutu School, and she was talking about how practical it was, and it helped her put together a strategy. She started with one event, and now it's helped her put together a strategy for a program over the course of the year from along a bunch of different subjects. And this here is from London Oratory School, and he, again, as a teacher, he was pleased that they came up that had something to do with what course he was teaching, and it was business studies, this particular one. It doesn't matter if it's business studies or math or physics or even art, because you need to bring things to life, and there's plenty of amazing things that you can do with these subjects. And the great thing is that the folks in the industry within 10 miles of you, their greatest need is to hire people and to get people at your age, at the school age, excited about contributing to the economy and contributing to their jobs. And again, this is just another from the Ursuline High School. And I think this might be, if the world of technology is working with us, there's going to be a video that comes up. Maybe not. Is it going to come up? Pray. Technology will thrive. No, it's not working. There it is. Okay, great.
I think it's really important for students to meet entrepreneurs because I think it's incredibly motivational.
My favourite part of the event today was really hearing from the entrepreneurs how they got to where they got to.
The question and answer session, because I thought it kind of gave specific insight.
I really liked hearing that the speakers enjoy doing their job, not for the money, but because they love it.
I think this event has made me more interested in technology.
Technology was something I've never really thought of before.
Entrepreneurship is not about social acceptance. It is about risk-taking. It is about doing what it is that is in your gut, what you're passionate about.
I think it'd be really good to be an entrepreneur because it just sounds exciting to have your own idea and to see it to come to life.
So everything is changing fast.
We have some of the brightest minds in the country who are trying to create new companies.
The 2 words I would sum up today with are inspiring and good experience.
I would say it was definitely memorable.
Inspirational, informative and eye-opening.
So that's just one of the clips. There's probably another come up. I want to talk about the format of our events. They're run sort of like TED sessions. I don't know if anybody here understands TED Talks or has seen them, but instead of having a panel, you've got 4 of the entrepreneurs, and they come at each talk for about 10 minutes, and they talk about their story. And they start at whatever the age the age of the children in the audience is. So if they're 9-year-olds, they talk about what they were thinking about when they were 9, and they connect that to what they're doing now. And they do that 4 times. And entrepreneurs all approach life from very, very different perspectives. So you never really know when you're curating and calling upon these people into your classrooms what's going to come up with it, which is great. And then after the 30 or 40 minutes on the stage, and we try not to be quite this, them and us, they go into the audience and they get very, very close, and they ask the kids to ask them questions. And that's our format. It's not one person. Everybody has very short attention spans this day and age, so it's not one long thing. We also recommend that the people are between 35 and 45. Because once you get my age, it's not really that inspirational to somebody who's younger because they can't make the connection about how they would make the path. So the format is kind of, it's unusual, but it definitely works.
It's developing a set of conversations, getting the energy level, giving people the ideas, and giving them hope so that they can be aspirational.
You've got some amazing people sitting at your tables from Google, Microsoft, all of these places that many people who are at your stage enough don't even get to meet. Leech information from these people.
When you think about what you want to do in the future, think about where you can have an impact. So don't just do what you think you're supposed to do, think about why you're doing it, because that, at the end of the day, is what's most powerful.
I
think it was really interesting for us to see really experienced and really intellectual entrepreneurs that have really succeeded in their lives and showing us that going down the business route is a really great route to go down.
And I think this might be the final one.
I definitely would encourage all schools to do it, and I think at this age, sort of 16, 17, it's very important because students are starting to make important life decisions about their future, which will affect the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years and beyond.
So that was just a couple of examples of what works. So I want to take you through, Charlie gave a great lead up to here, talking about the TripAdvisor. We've created a service like a TripAdvisor or an Airbnb or an Experience or a Sainsbury's or an Coutu, a way for you to choose the entrepreneurs that are within 10 miles of where you are, that are running successful businesses and creating the jobs literally in your neighborhood. And this is just, I'm going to take you through, not a live demonstration because that truly would be too brave. I'm going to take you through what it takes to do it. The first thing we need to know is where you are, because we think it's really important. Charlie talked about community and locality and creativity being the center of the universe, and it really is critical. I don't think you should be inviting people necessarily from Silicon Valley or from London up here if you're in Manchester or if you're in Sheffield. That isn't the point. And I think so what we do is we find out where you are, and then you can either browse the founders who are around you, and I'll show you how that's done, or you can just say, oh, I don't know, pick some for me. We've asked teachers over the last 3 years whether or not they wanted us to suggest people that they should ask or whether or not they wanted to choose, and it's literally half and half. So you have the choice. It depends on whether or not you're a picker or you'd like a recommendation. At the moment on our database, there's 7,753, so we've got about 90% of the scale-ups. And they are within, this is a really ugly map, but this shows the distribution of the 7,000 founders, all of whom are willing, able, and ready to go into your classrooms right now. And the red spots are, this is sort of an internal thing that we use. The red spots are where we don't think we have critical mass. We don't know why there aren't that many entrepreneurs there, but it indicates to us that if you want to put on an event, we might have to persuade someone from somewhere else to come and visit you. But the good news is there's a lot of them, and you may not realize that how easy they are to get a hold of, but they are really quite easy. So just like TripAdvisor, you've got a sort of a web interface. It's what subject. If you're a math teacher, you may want to just be focusing on entrepreneurs who use math algorithms. If you're an art teacher, you might want to just choose those that have a heavy art element in their skills bases. This sorts through the skills that these founders have and allows you to curate more gently who comes into your classroom. On the gender, we didn't used to have gender because we thought it was very politically incorrect to have it there, but a lot of teachers wanted it there, so it is there. And you can just look at women or men, and if you don't mind, then it's sort of random how the lists are generated to you. You click on, these usually have pictures, so you'd click on that, you get a little profile of who the founder was. You can see the business that they're running. You can see videos that have been taken by the children or uploaded publicly. But we encourage the kids at these events to video them and then upload them to our website. And then we make them available to the teachers who are next choosing these speakers. So if you don't like the way they speak to kids, you don't have to have them. And it's a beautiful way of doing it. It's very similar to the Airbnb way. People who own flats sort of take pictures of them. This way is teachers and students who have videoed the people giving their short talks, load them up, and it works. If you like the look of that person, you click the I'm going to add them to my short list. They end up in your short list. And then just as you would go to a checkout, it's kind of horrible as a human being checking out another human being, but anyway, we couldn't think of any other good way of doing it. You check them out. And when you check them out, what happens is we will connect them. This is a huge collaboration between industries. So the schools database came from EduBase. The collection of emails of the founders come from something called LinkedIn or LinkedIn for Good. Usually they charge for these services, but because it's for teachers and they're very, very passionate about it, they don't charge for these services if you're a teacher and you're seeking to invite these people to come into your classroom. We then invite the founders that you've picked and you said you thought interesting. If we haven't got a response for you within 72 hours, then we will supplement it. But on average, 95% of the events that have been curated or arranged by teachers are filled within 72 hours. That means that we will have contacted the speakers. They've said, yes, I can come on that day and tell me more. We then send them some little videos about how some of them feel uncomfortable talking to young children, so we send them videos about how you get rid of 3-letter acronyms in your words. And we also show them the most effective, as voted by the children and the teachers, videos of founders. And that makes the founders feel more comfortable about being in a classroom, because it's a bit of an unusual place for them to be as well. Remember, this is also within 10 miles of where that founder lives or works. So this is their community that they're able to go back and give to. It's not asking them to go far away. They love the idea of giving back to their schools. When we first started out, we thought we would have a conversion rate, a normal conversion rate in our industry is between 2 and 10%. Amazingly to us, when a teacher asks a founder to show up in their classroom, the conversion rate is between 25 and 50%. And that's extraordinary. So we know we have people that are willing to come in. We know the outcomes are extraordinary in terms of STEM and getting kids excited, which is really good. 92% of all of the school leads who have arranged events through Founders4Schools are recommending them to others. Of the students, 94.6% say that they are inspired by them. And entrepreneurs, the point I made earlier, the entrepreneurs love the idea of contributing to their community. If it's a school, they will say yes. They're not going to say yes to a commercial organization that asks them to speak at a conference, but will they go speak to a school within 10 miles of them? They would love it. It solves a problem they have, and it makes them feel like more worthy members of a community, which they love. This is one particular woman. She's like this high, and she's a complete powerhouse. But she was, she always felt sort of limited, and now she wants to spread the word. So there's a case study of a typical program that you might have if you're a school. And October, November would be events for 11 to 14-year-olds. The reason is you really want to get them before they make the GCSE choices. These people can help bring to life the courses and help illustrate why you might want to study physics if you're a girl, or maths if you're, or if you're any gender. And the Appathon mentors, we ran a national Appathon recently, which is creating, with Apps for Good as one of our partners, which was fantastic. It was a competition for kids in secondary school kids to think up apps that they wanted to create rather than use apps that had been created by other people. Founders4Schools supplied mentors to teachers all over the country to help them, because not all of them knew how to create an app or even get their kids in the class to think about apps. So we used the business community to go in and supplement that. Idea Mentors, Global Entrepreneurship Week, January, February, March for the younger kids to help them think about, just start thinking about how the world works, and that business might be something that they might want to think about. Science Week coming up in March. There's a lot of robotics, making things. Again, what Charles, I think you grant every one of your wishes. Making things is really important, and you can do a search on companies that make things. They can run open days. You can visit them, and they're really they're 10 miles of you, and they're happy to do it. June, July, I think working around the work experience, we also collect from these founders whether or not they're interested in providing work experience, which is often a really hard pain point for you. And we think it's kind of genius getting the people who are creating the jobs right now, 100% of them net new jobs, being the ones that suggest the work experience for the kids that are in your local community. We're in Manchester, so I thought I'd look and see what events that had been on here recently. And you can see that they did 2 in October, and they did 2 just a couple of weeks ago. After the teacher put it together, you can see here, the teacher was Danny Cheatham. And one of the events, this is just one of the events, was for 50 to 75 Year 12 students. We create automatically for the teacher this website. So, and it links to the careers and the company's information, shows you that these particular companies have 17 million in turnover. But all of those buttons up there you can push. And so the homework assignment is usually, why don't you go click on these buttons on this live website and see what they did before they got here? What did they study? And that helps the kids ask their questions for when the entrepreneurs go in and descend into the classroom. So really, I just finish up with saying, will your students be working for and creating tomorrow's companies? When I look at kids, sometimes, I think, I wonder what company you might want to create. I wonder what you're going to be passionate about. Are you going to take cameras apart and then help 1 billion children in India see? Is that what your path is going to be? And I think that given that you've got 24 different places on the path that kids can start up, really interesting to think what a fantastic opportunity to start them along that journey. For me, it was absolutely my teachers that started my journey. And if we can do this collectively, the impact that we can have will be absolutely profound. So thank you very much for listening.